Hello friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Spice. Today we are going to look at the next lesson, that is the endgame studies. We have done one or two endgame studies before, especially I remember the one where we saw how pawn was more powerful than the rook. Usually the endgame studies are unusual in nature, they are more of entertainment value than actual useful in the games. But the study which I have taken here, I found that it is very instructive and it is entertaining as well. So the concept is based on one of the topics which we have seen before. We have discussed some theoretical endgame positions with bishop and the rook pawn. So this is based on the concept of the wrong cornered bishop. So let's get started with the position here. As we can see, white is trying to win his pawn on the 8 square, and we see that just now the black king is managing itself on the edge of the magic square. So we know from the winning square of the pawn, we draw a diagonal till the pawn's line, and then we form another diagonal like this, so we get a square. So the black king is right in the square of the pawn. Here white cannot play a4 at once because the bishop is standing. Otherwise, after a4, the king would have not been into the square of the pawn, as the square reduces by 2 steps. White starts using the idea, he wants to move the bishop in such a way that he covers c7 and the b8 squares. White is aiming to take the pawn to the a6 square and then try to win it. Let's get started with the simple line, bishop e7, kf7, and then we see after the move a4, king e7, a5, kd8, a6, kc7, and king reaches the after the moves bishop e7, kf7, a4, ke7, a5, kd8, a6, and the king reaches the magic square of the pawn, and next move it will be able to capture the white pawn. After the move bd6, these three squares b4, c5 and d6, they are very logical and they look like obvious moves, right? Because bishop is trying to either c7 and b8 squares and the pawn is trying to reach the a6 square. So after the move bd6, king f7, a4, ke6, a5, again the same problem, king takes d6, and after a6 the king is able to reach c7 or the c6 square, managing to come into the square of the pawn. So many people mostly start their calculation with the bishop c5, because from c5 it looks like we are guarding the a7 square and we are also blocking the b6 and d6 squares. So after king f7 now, a4, ke6, a5, king d5, a6, and we see that black is in some trouble now, because after the move king c6, the king has lost both the control of b7 and the b6 squares. So it looks like it's winning for black. Let's play the moves. a4, ke6, a5, kd5, a6, king to c6. And we may assume that this position has become a zugzwang. But the problem is, if white wastes any bishop moves, like bishop f2, then the king has place on c7 square and then it is threatening to go to b8. So after bg3 check, king can simply come to b6. White may waste the move with the move kg2 here, trying to come near the pawn, and at the same time we see that king cannot take the bishop. But again the same idea, king c7, once the king reaches b8, then it will be safe on the 8 square, and we know that with pawn and bishop, the rook's pawn winning square has to be controlled by the bishop, then only it's possible to win. So we'll reach a drawn position there. So only move bishop a7, keeping control of b8 and b6 squares. After the move bd6 check, black simply has kb6. So after bishop a7, again king c6, and now the threat is king b5. So any king who allows king b5, so the bishop has to move away. After bb8, king b6, forcing a7, and again kb7, and the position is drawn. And if the bishop moves back to e3, d4 or f2, then again comes kc7 idea, kb8. When we reach the previous idea and the position is again drawn. We should also note that the study positions, they have only one solution, and it is mostly the most unexpected way. So which makes the study positions more fascinating. So here white played the move bb4. At first it's very difficult to understand why on b4. Mostly we consider the moves c5 and d6 only. But after the calculation we did from the bc5 line, it becomes clear that we can not win by controlling only b6 or c7. So white needs to control both these squares. So that was clear from the bc5 line, which makes us understand what bb4 does. After king f7, a4, ke6, a5, kd5, a6, king c6, and now we see the difference. We can play the move bishop a5. See, the bishop came from the other side and blocked both the squares b6 and c7. And now black is in zugzwang because kb5 allows a7 pawn queens, only move d5, and we see that now the king comes on time. The white king was right in the square of the pawn. So after the moves d4, kf3, d3, ke3, d2, kd2, black king has to move and give way to the pawn without allowing kb7. So white wins the game. After, let's say, kd6, a7 pawn would queen. Let's look at one more line. Black can try to get his king from the d8 square. After the move bishop b4, king f7, a4, ke8, a5, kd8, it's very important that white plays precisely here, because after the move a6, there is king c7, and when after bd6 check, king has the place on b6 squares. White is unable to control both b8 and b6. So after kd8, very strong bd6, taking control of the c7 square, and after kc8 only move, now comes a6, and we see that the square b7 and b8, which we had discussed before, these two are the key squares for the rook pawn. So king is not able to reach the key squares. See, the king and pawn endgames become the most important amongst the endgames, because every other endgame can come down to that. So here the knowledge of king and pawn endgame will help us solve this position very easily. So white will win this position. King has to come back to d8, and after a7 the pawn promotes to queen. So my aim is to do such endgame studies which are not only fascinating, but they are instructive and they are useful. They can happen in our own games also. So I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.